The original 3 schools were the Wolf, Cat, and Gryphon schools. When asked about other witchers, Vesemir will only name these 3 schools. He doesn't tell us where the schools are located, however, so we can assume that every witcher school is as secretive about their hideouts as the Wolf school is. Because even though other witchers do know of the name Kaer Morhen, they never seem to visit. What we do know is that, as the Wolf school seems quite balanced in their teachings, where they focus equally on swords, magic, potions, etc., the other schools seem to have a stronger focus on certain combat styles. Outside of the Wolf school, the Cat school is the best known witcher school. Not exactly for the right reasons, but still. In regards to their mutations, we have proof, at least somewhat, that they differ from the Wolf school. When described by Dandelion, they certainly don't look good. The notorious cats, he explains, are witchers but failed, unsuccessful mutations, madmen, psychopaths and sadists. The cats, they call themselves, because they really are like cats, aggressive, violent, unpredictable and capricious. This explanation was prompted because Geralt and Dandelion had just met the only cat school witcher he ever does meet in the books. Brayhan, also known as the Cat of Lellow. He was en route to Vizima to try his hand at the Striga contract, and Geralt was a threat to that contract. So he decided he wanted to fight Geralt to the death. Geralt at the time didn't have any swords, which is another story altogether, but regardless, Geralt refused to fight, so Brayhan threatened to kill everyone present in the inn if Geralt didn't fight him. He was confident because Geralt had no swords. Coincidentally, the woman holding his swords was sitting right next to him and promptly returned the swords to Geralt, at which point Brayhan decided to back down. Geralt let him go with a warning. 4 years ago, in Lellow, Brayhan had caused a bloodbath. If he ever repeated that act, Geralt would find him and kill him, like Liam Neeson minus the phone. So this entire encounter paints the cats as cowardly thugs. Of course, not all cat school witchers were bad apples, though. One of Lambert's best friends was a cat school witcher called Aidan. He was unfortunately killed by another cat school witcher, however, Yad Karadin. Cat school witchers were unfortunately quite alright with taking assassination contracts on other people, even their own. They weren't exactly known for their honorable conduct. Lexandra, another cat school witcher, even stole his school's Grand Master diagrams to sell on the black market. They will do anything and everything for coin, at least most of them. So cat witchers certainly weren't well loved for their antics, but then again, few people would be happy to be called a failed mutation. Having said that, and this is again just speculation on my part, considering that Triss talks about renegade wizards first discovering the Witcher mutagens a very long time ago, and they perfected them over the years, we could definitely make the case that the Cat School may be the first Witcher school. It would make sense for the first few experimental Witchers to be botched experiments, much like how Salamandra could only manage to create deformed mutants in what little time they had. From the notes written by a mage that captured and tortured a cat school witcher by the name of Kian, we learn that the cat school had elven roots, and they use elven gear for the most part. The note reads, "As I suspected, the cat school witchers are for the most part of elven stock. This school must have some tie to the elder races. Perhaps its founder was a member of the Enshe?" Now, of course, we don't have any other solid information, and even what we have, a quote from Dandelion about their failed mutations, alongside the confessions of a tortured witcher, is unreliable at best. But if we assume both to be true, this could mean that as the elves realized they would not win a war against the humans with their own numbers dwindling, they sought to bolster their ranks with the witchers sent away from Kaer Morhen. In return for information on the trials and behind-the-scenes help in the fight against the humans, they would supply them with armor and weapons, diagrams to make more equipment. Considering that less and less Witcher mutations would fail as the sorcerers perfected their elixirs, it might make sense that most of the cat school witchers would eventually be elven, as the only new cat school witchers would be created by the elves themselves. In years back, there were certainly more elven sages around as well, and given that regular sorcerer magic pales in comparison to an Ensavern, an elven sage, they would have little trouble filling in the gaps in the failed witcher's knowledge. Humans would likely not even notice the cat eyes, as elves usually strike fast and in an ambush, where you have very little time to look one another in the eyes, or, if they did see, they'd write it off as another elf thing. Humans were kind of like that. It would also make a lot of sense, seeing as the cat school does in fact specialize in speed and precision, and it is the only known school that openly accepts women into their ranks. And as we know, speed and precision is very much an integral part of the elven fighting style. They very rarely use brute strength alone. Not to mention that we see plenty of female Scoia'tael warriors as well, whereas we see next to none in human armies of any kind, bar the few mercenaries that fought their way up on their own terms. But again, this is all speculation of course, and not based on any facts outside of what we know from Dandelion and Kian. But as little as is known about the cat school, even less is known about the school of the Gryphon. All we have to go on are their specialization in signs, their armor, and 2 witchers that were part of the school. Firstly, George of Coggan, who was mainly known for rushing from village in need to village in need. This eventually became his downfall, as he forgot to pick up his silver sword as he rushed off again, this time to fight a green dragon. But without a sword, of course. He did in fact still defeat the dragon, even without a weapon. The second witcher was Jerome. In a report written by Captain Augustus Firabras, he had this to say about the witcher. The witcher I summoned reached Assar on the 12th of September. He made a favorable impression. I had expected a cold killer, yet found myself speaking with someone who could easily be mistaken for a normal man. If not for his expansive knowledge concerning the habits of monsters, the 2 swords on his back, and the griffin head medallion on his chest. Jerome was one of the child surprises taken to be made into a witcher. However, his father deeply regretted agreeing to the law of surprise, and so vowed to reverse the witcher mutations on his son. He tricked Jerome to his laboratory with a fake contract so he might try and cure him of being a witcher. Jerome, however, learned of the name of the mage who had paid for his contract from Captain Augustus. Truth be told though, Jerome had hated his father. For his father was in fact a cruel man. So instead of turning and running away like he should have, Jerome flew into a rage and went to give his father a piece of his mind. Unfortunately, he was instead captured by the man. Before testing relatively successful cures on Jerome, he first experimented tirelessly on unwilling subjects, who all died in the end. And although the mutations he discovered all worked, they did quite the opposite of what he'd hoped. They deepened the mutation instead of reversing them. In the end, Moreau gave up and went home, leaving his son to die in his laboratory. So not a great deal of information, but both Gryphon witchers are described as pleasant and honest men. They approach their employers with warmth, which seems to be appreciated. They are well spoken, and their armor somewhat resembles the knightly attire from Toussaint. So it's not entirely out of the question that they hail from this equally pleasant land, especially as they seem to exhibit somewhat knightly behavior as well. Since their school specializes in sign usage, it might also be possible they focus on recruiting new witchers from among those children that can't quite make it to a proper sorcerer school, but do show a gift for the power. Curiously, as far as I've been able to find, we never meet any mages in Toussaint. The only mage ever present is Fringilla, and she is from Nilfgaard, not Toussaint. And at the party Geralt attends with Anna Henrietta, it is also noted that the attending mage is from Ophir. In fact, he is not even announced as a sorcerer or mage, but as a master of visual illusions. So either they don't like to use the terms mage or sorcerer, or he's not even a mage. So to add some more speculation here, Toussaint might also simply frown upon magic, and would-be mages are sent off to the School of the Gryphon instead. even if they could make it as a proper magic user. So those were the 3 best known schools, but even less is known about the 3 schools only shown in the Witcher games: the Viper, the Bear, and the Manticore. It's not entirely impossible that these schools are simply newer than the original 3, as Vesemir doesn't mention any of them. It's also possible, however, that these schools were simply too far away for Vesemir to have ever come into contact with them. Given that the original 3 are likely all stationed in the Northern Realms, or close to it at least, it would make sense for Vesemir to only care about those. The Viper certainly sounds and behaves like a group of shadow walkers, not interested in sharing their existence with anyone bar their current employer and their target. The Bear makes a perfect fit for the Skelliger Isles, and the Manticore certainly gives off the Zerrikanian vibes. But of the 3, the Viper is definitely the most prominent, so let's start with that one. We meet 3 Viper Witchers during Geralt's troubles in Temeria. Letho of Gullet, sent by Emperor Emir of Emrys to destabilize the north by killing its monarchs, puts the blame for his killings on Geralt, and Geralt isn't best pleased with that development. In the end though, Letho reveals that the only reason he took the job in the first place was because Emir had promised to restore the School of the Viper, which, as a side note, was set to store an impressive library, especially on the topic of the Wild Hunt. According to Letho, at least 2 Viper Witchers were still on the path, and he'd like them to be able to go home, so they could meet again. Simply put, the Witcher life is a lonely one, and while Geralt has something of a home in Kaer Morhen with his Witcher colleagues, most Witcher schools don't seem to have a home base anymore. And truth be told, Kaer Morhen is only a ruin at this point as well. Seret and Ox, his companions, both don't seem like the worst people in the world either. They're just trying to rebuild in a world that doesn't want them anymore, or indeed never wanted them in the first place, which is a fact well demonstrated in a letter from Colgrim of the Viper, addressed to Ivar Evileye, whose name certainly doesn't help, the Master Witcher of the Viper School. In it, he explains that he's been unjustly accused of kidnapping the son of a beekeeper in the village he was staying at. When he decided to kill a few monsters instead in exchange for his freedom, he was unfortunately killed by the wraiths he set out to kill. And while most Witcher schools seem to conduct themselves with either the Viper's cunning and cold, or the Griffin's warm smile and chivalry, the School of the Bear does seem very Skelliger indeed. We again hear of 2 Bear Witchers. The first being Gert, who, according to a letter sent to a woman named Ingeborga, arrived at Fort Tursach on summer's first day, where he promptly drained more than 1 barrel of mead with the Jarl. And as he was now good friends with the Jarl, he set off to rid him of the nearby Sirens, where he, to no one's surprise, was described as strong as a bear. And each tale we find on Witcher Gert of the Bear School mainly involves happy Jarls and a great deal of very heavy drinking. Everybody seemed to love the guy, except, unfortunately, for the people living on the mainland. Specifically, Redania, and even more specifically, Arxia. The now Duchess of Arxia had asked Gert for help in dethroning her father so she could take over. Gert, however, had refused, and clearly this was grounds for an execution post-haste. From the wording used in the letter describing Gert's misdeeds, which is very Toussaintesque, we can surmise that this was a case of the Queen of Hearts shouting, "Off with his head, for he did not bow low enough." Sadly, we'll never know what truly happened to Gert in the end. There are some indications that we find his skeleton on our quest to gather the Bear School armor set, but no solid evidence. At the very least, though, we know he was a hero in Skellige. The second Bear Witcher is Junot of Belhaven. His story is a lot less heroic than Gert's, but also very Skellige. Junot was described as big as a mountain and bearded as a dwarf. In trying to gather enough coin to have his armor crafted, he takes on a contract in Toussaint. Unfortunately, all the coin he had saved thus far he loses while gambling. So even though he's unsure about the monster he'll need to face for this contract, he decided to go after it. Mostly unprepared because he's in dire need of coin. That was a very bad idea, of course, and he dies trying to defeat the beast which turned out to be a Shalmar. Now, obscure as most of the information on these schools might have been, none are as obscure as the Manticore School. Barely anything, if anything at all, is known about this school, save for their school patron and the fact that they seem fond of using potions and bombs. We only know of a single Manticore Witcher, Merton. When first we hear of Merton, he's a prisoner at the Bastoy prison ruins. He is imprisoned with a cellmate who seems to be a devout follower of Lebioda, and tries desperately to convert Merton to the faith as well, which he eventually succeeds in. When Merton's sentence is served, he sets out to cleanse his soul and become a true disciple of Lebioda. On his path to enlightenment, he leaves behind everything that once made him a witcher, including his name, as in the end he renames himself to Shavel and leaves to go adventuring. This leaves us with next to no information on the school at all, except that apparently, Merton at least, was a bit of a scoundrel. Even the armor set doesn't tell us much. Its design seems close to the wolf, viper, or even the base cat armor, albeit with a lot more potions attached to the belt. So we're left to speculate. Given that the school specializes in bombs and potions, and the blacksmith that sends us to collect the armor diagrams tells us the Manticore hails from the far east, they might very well hail from Zerrikania. Even though the Manticore does not exclusively live in or around Zerrikania, they might well have chosen it for its partial dragon-like features and their strong poison, which they no doubt used often for their bombs and potions. Curiously, the armor design used in the Grand Master Manticore gear is the same as the armor Geralt wears when he leaves Kaer Morhen for the first time to set out on the path again, after escaping the hunt and defending the keep from Salamandra. Geralt even mentions wearing Manticore armor when speaking with the blacksmith. The reason this is so curious is because, as we've noted before, Vesemir doesn't mention the school of the Manticore at all. We'll chalk it up to Vesemir getting quite old. Finally, for completion's sake, let me also tell you the story of the Witcher of the Wolf School, Adon, who accepted a contract to escort Isabelle Duchamp and her team, who were on their way to the Elven ruins at Termes, to study the area. Adon warns the expedition that the area they wish to excavate was in fact cursed, and they should leave as quickly as they are able. The group refuses, however, and so he helps them enter the ruins. But after he's had some time to look around the interior, he tells them again that they'll at least need to go back to town to hire extra guards, as he can't tell exactly what's in store for them down there, just that it's bad. However, one of the expedition's members, George Herbert, had convinced himself and everyone around him that the lost treasure of King Divathaf was no doubt hidden in the ruins, and they couldn't have someone steal it away from under their noses while they were off hiring guards. Unfortunately for everyone involved, Adon was right. The place was severely cursed and no one made it out alive in the end. Judging by the information available on the various Witcher schools, which is admittedly not a lot, we can agree at least that Witchers are an endangered species at this point. So what does the future look like for our favorite monster hunters? If there is a future at all. We'll save that for the next episode. What Witcher school would you join if you had the choice?